Well, Eric Sanders always makes it a challenge for me to interview him because he always works out at the Y at like 5 in the morning and says, Ned, I can do my interview at 5:30. It's always been a challenge, but I've risen to it. So Eric, this was I think 6 years ago when you were first running that we interviewed you here. You've had quite a run as being a city councilor, and I've seen you not just be a city councilor but lead the RSU withdrawal efforts, and I've just been aware that you've put in. Aren't you also on the Energy and Climate Committee?
Yeah.
I mean, you're involved in a lot of different stuff that sucks up a lot of time. And I thought, okay, so that's a lot. But then my kids are about the same age, and he's also like coaching, coaching soccer, and also attending. And if you're a soccer dad, that sucks up a bit of time too. So, I gather you don't work, right?
No, I do actually. It's in between everything else. So
For people who don't know you, and obviously you've been around now for a while as a city councilor, so people have gotten to know you. But for those who are looking in, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I live in Belfast. I've been here 12 years, Courtney and I, and the kids. 12 years. We live on Main Street.
How many kids and how old are they?
Three kids now. Almost two teenagers, which is unusual to live through. 13, 12, and 7. And the 7-year-old runs the show.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a dog, Henry.
Mm-hmm. What's your professional background? I mean, what do you do for work? I know you were once a professional actor, right?
Yes, I was an actor and a musician and a drummer, and hail from a small town in Missouri, and then moved to New York City in, I guess, 1982, and lived there 16 years, and then we headed up here in 98. So we've been in Maine for about 17, 18 years. I work at Bank of America, and I'm a master coach, and I work in the preferred sales department, and that's my real job.
Gotcha.
And then I teach drums on the side, and
Don't you play in like Captain Obvious too?
Yes, we have a band called Captain Obvious that plays. I think we play 3 gigs a year, basically. So we have.
I must make it to all of them.
Yeah, we have about 3 gigs a year, and we practice about 3 times a year. But there's no ego in the band, and we kind of like that, because if you've ever been in bands, you can, there's always they always splinter up due to things like that. So it's a very democratic band and stuff. But I think that the 3 kids keep me busy, and then everything that I do. I grew up. My parents were big volunteers, I guess is what you'd call it, in the 60s and 70s, the 1960s and 70s, in our little town in Missouri. And I guess I learned from them to give back to the community.
So you've been on city council for 6 years,
Yep.
and you want to continue doing it. Why? And what do you look at back as what you contribute to city council?
Well, I think it's been 6 years. I ran on 6 years ago on the premise that that Belfast had some opportunities that we could, as a town, take advantage of. Again, I grew up in a small town. We chose Belfast 12 years ago because it's a small town, and so it's sort of like you want to protect it, what it is, and you also want to make sure that it stays relevant for the future to continue being popular. This town has a lot of history, a proud history, and it's changed over time, the industries and things that drive it, but the town is still a beautiful town. There was, 6 years ago, if I recall, there was no Harbor Walk, no rail trail, no Front Street.
Well, there was Front Street, but not the shipyard.
Not the shipyard. So yeah, there was a bit of a decimated area. I guess you'd call that blight and sludge. But
especially if you're applying for grants.
yes, and we had no economic development director. So I ran on all the idea that I'm me. I'm a volunteer, and I love Belfast, and I think that the answer to your question about what's happened in the last 6 years, I think the last 6 years, the council, the 5 councils, and the mayor, Walter Ash, have worked together very well. And I used to watch city council meetings on TV before I ran, and sometimes it was a bit acrimonious and personality driven, my way or the highway or whatever. And I'd have to say that I think, because I've been on the council 6 years, and Hurley and I are the only two from 6 years ago with Walter, that even though the people on the council have changed, the working together aspect of it hasn't changed. So I think we've been able to accomplish a lot of things because of that teamwork. And I'm a big believer in teamwork from my volunteer coaching at the Y and schools. It's being on a team, liking the team, and having a goal and then going after it. Whether you win or lose, that's the team aspect that I think people remember, and I think that's why the council's done well. We've been enormously pleased with the Harbor Walk and the rail trail, which was an original idea from decades ago about tying in some paths outside of town, greenways. We've been enormously blessed to have both of these either completed or almost completed. Front Street Shipyard, we had to choose them. They weren't the only suitors for that site, and we had to, about 100 and 200 hours of meetings to do all the land swaps and things like that. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of time spent, and these things just don't happen. So what did I contribute to that? I was one of five. I will take no personal credit for anything, but I will tell you that working together as a council has reaped a lot of benefit, I think.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to accomplish in the next, session if you're reelected?
Well, we have right now we're working on the beginnings of the Front Street project, which is a mammoth undertaking, again, largely driven by grants because Front Street Shipyard is there, so the industrial grants and things like that. But we are redeveloping Front Street to make it wider, safer. It's can be misconstrued as boring. We're replacing sewer and electric and things like that. But that project is going to be extremely important to stabilizing that area of the town. I think that all of these ideas have happened. We now need to manage them. So there's a lot of work post-projects to make sure that they are as fresh as they were when we first got them. Does that make sense? So it's like if you get a gift for a holiday and then you have it, what's it look like 2 years later, and what do you need to do to make adjustments? That's very important. The schools are going to be very important post-withdrawal, and I'm sure I'll be involved with that as well. We now have RSU 71, and I think that's good. I think that's good because now nobody can blame each other. There was a lot of, this is my town, protect my town, a bit of dysfunction on the old RSU 20 board. And now with the new fresh board for 71, you have the chance and opportunity to direct your own path. And Belfast, I think, has a tremendous school system and a lot of advantages. And we need to, as a city, work with the school board more, or hope to, because we have no say. But I think that working with them and vice versa will be good. The big elephant in the room still from 6 years ago that has not happened is the event center. And there are at least two different groups trying to get that started. I don't know if that would happen in the next 2 years. It would certainly, but you never know. Mm-hmm. So, I'm running on all of that. Fiscally, we are in a state where our revenue sharing has dropped about $600,000 over the last 6 years from the state, and yet we have only raised taxes twice. We have to make sure that we continue to put in sidewalks, replace the asphalt on the roads. We have 68 to 70 city employees we have to take care of. There's a lot of reasons to continue to run. Plus, I like it, and I will say that if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be running. But I'm the council, the mayor, Joe Slocum. It's after 6 years, we all have a common vision. Mm-hmm. And so there's more vision to do.
All right, well, that's great. Well,
And
I
then,
I didn't even have to ask him any questions.
and then, no. But I think that along the way, we have to remember, we have to make sure that people understand that change is not necessarily bad. We're open to discussion about any and all change. We're not going to win every time, right? And then what do you do then? I think one of the largest things that people don't realize is how very little tax money goes into things like the Harbor Walk compared to the downtown TIF, which Front Street contributes mightily to. I think the last 6 years, we had 42 empty storefronts when I ran 6 years ago. I don't think we have 42 empty storefronts now. Belfast is becoming more and more of a look at what Belfast does in the state, and I'm very proud of that. Finally, Ned, because it's relatively new in the last year, the Energy Committee is going to be a huge focus for the next 2 years for 2 reasons. It's important that we do it, that we change energy uses for the city, not just for a smaller carbon footprint. If you look at the fire station and the solar panels, you get what I'm talking about. But it's also because it's going to cost us money to do that, right? You don't just get solar for free and then save money. You have to invest money to change to saving money. And that takes explanations and time, and I'm up for that challenge, as is everybody on the Energy Committee. And the solar project at the old landfill is already being emulated by Portland, from what I hear, or they came along at the same time. And we're certainly not Portland, we're not Bar Harbor, we are Belfast. But in reality, we were one of the first cities in the state to decide to put a solar farm at a basically unusable spot.
Landfill.
And so that's stuff that we're doing.
All right, well, I've been speaking with Eric Sanders. And Eric, you've...
Rattled on.
No. It's very interesting. I'm sure that the voters are going to be very interested in what you said. And I encourage everybody to vote on, when is it, November?
November 3rd is the election. Please vote.
All right. So until next time, this is Ned Leitner for Somewhere in Waldo County.
Take care, everybody.